All right.
We're going to get started in about 1 minute. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Holocaust Museum Houston. I'm Wendy Warren, Chief Learning and Interpretation Officer. Today, we're honored to share the story of Renia Spiegel and her sister, Elizabeth Bellak. Renia began a diary just as World War II was about to break out. Renia's diary gives us a clear picture of an intelligent, courageous girl who was an aspiring writer and gifted poet. The diary came to a heartbreaking end. Her sister Elizabeth, who is here with us today via Zoom, as you see, didn't know that her older sister had kept a diary as a teenager in Poland. Once discovered, Elizabeth's daughter, Alexandra, who is also with us today, worked to get it translated into English and published so that Renia's words can be shared with the world. So to discuss the diary and the life of Elizabeth and Alexandra and Renia, we have our moderator, Dee Dee Dochen. And let me tell you about her. Helping individuals and organizations amplify and enhance their messages through spoken, written, and performance-based voices is the passion and lifelong work of Dee Dee Dochen and DDD Marketing Communications. A message strategist, producer, coach, and facilitator. Dee Dee's foundation in public relations and her side gig as a vocal performer have for 30 plus years shaped her ability to make messages sing and stick. Chair of Houston's citywide Real Abilities Film and Art Festival in 2020, she continues to annually produce the festival's Real Music Concert each February that showcases the talents of musicians who live with disabilities. In June 2024, Dee Dee was named a Daily Point of Light by the International Points of Light organization. Please welcome our guests, and I will turn it over to Dee Dee.
Thank you, Wendy, and welcome to Elizabeth and Alexandra. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have a room full of people here at Holocaust Museum Houston. It's spring break, so we have some young people here as well, which is always very valuable and very important. We're glad you're here. What a fascinating, multi-dimensional book this is on so many levels. I'm going to talk about my takeaways, and then we're going to listen to the real stars of today. First and foremost, of course, Renia's diary is a diary. As Deborah Lipstadt writes in her foreword to the book, diaries give us emotional immediacy that you don't always get in memoirs. In this case, it's Renia's emotional immediacy that takes us on her journey from pre-war to war, from joy to fear and uncertainty, from innocence to a first true love, told through her poems that reflect wisdom and insight beyond her years. Renia's diary is also a love story between Renia and her boyfriend Zygmunt, a love story that lasted far beyond Renia's death, a love story that combined with the persistence of Renia's niece Alexandra eventually brought Renia's diary into publication just over 10 years ago. Third, as we read in her notes at the end, it's a perspective by Renia's sister Elizabeth, the sister who lived, about life after the war, about the memories, the trauma, the connections with the man Zygmunt, who was her sister's boyfriend and her own savior. And importantly, it's about the, quote, never failing dedication and perseverance of Elizabeth's daughter Alexandra that ensured that Renia's words would never be lost to history. We'll hear about all of this and more, but we're going to start by letting Elizabeth, Renia's baby sister, tell you a little bit about her life and show you some pictures. The slides, please.
Well, nice to meet you all today. I'm far here. I'm here in Poland. I'm here in America. So there we are. My mom, my sister, And the little thing is me. It's on the border of Romania. On the other side, you see, and the bridge leads it to Romania. It was built in the 30s. Before that, there was no bridge to go there. So we used to go to this little city to buy sugar, beets, sugar and pepper and whatever we needed, salt. We lived on the estate of my father. So there were just, as you see these dresses, my mother used to go to Romania, buys us these little dresses. And they had very nice things. They made it by hand. And then we used to go there with my mom, and we go by horses. We didn't have any cars there. We went by horses, and we had a guy who butcher, you say, and he brought us to town. I was born in Stafti. That was the place where my father had the fields. It's called Charnozem, which is the black earth. So everything grew very well. Used to grow wheat, and you grow sugar beets, and used to sell it for sugar. So we lived there very happily with my sister, my mom. My sister actually had to go to school, so she would be staying sometimes with my grandparents in the town called Przemyśl. And now, I don't know, that's our story right here. We just used to visit the city with my mom, and she used to buy stuff. The city was also known like little resort. It was very nice and sunny, and people came to see, I guess, Romania and the River Nest. Now, in the summertime, we had something called Dozinki. Dozinki is summer festival. So you see those red beets, that's corals. We used to recite, we used to sing. I used to be the same as my sister. This is called Strój Krakowski. It's made in a region of the city of Krakow, which is a beautiful city where the kings are all buried in the, uh, um, what is a zamek? It's a castle called Wawel, beautiful city. So in the summertime, my mother would dress us up. My sister was 6 years older than I. You can see she's older. And we used to go to the city of Zaleszczyki, where they had the festival. And this outfit is for Krakowski, it's Kraków. It's Krakowski Strój, it's called. She gonna put next coming next picture. Oh, so when I was about 7 years old, my mother took me to Warsaw. I used to recite my sister poetry in the city of Lwów when I was 5 years old. Here I must be 7 or 8. And my mother decided that I had talent to be an actress. So this picture is taken sometimes in Warsaw, where I was the Polish Shirley Temple. My real name was Renia Spiegel. Now it's Elizabeth Bellak. I married George Bellak, who was a Viennese person. They escaped from Vienna, lived in New York. When I was teaching high school, I was a German and Russian teacher. I met George Bellak. So this picture shows you, this is all in Polish, and it says that I was in two movies and some other movies that some directors, uh, no, this movie, no, it just shows that I was in two movies and I was dancing, I was singing, I was playing the piano, I was also on the stage. I used to recite a lot of poetry by two very famous men. They were called Jan Brzechwa and Julian Tuwim. They all lived in Warsaw, and they were very famous. They were both actually Jews, but I think they got baptized, whatever. And Julian Tuvin went to New York, tried to write, but he couldn't. It wasn't his own language, so he went back. I used to recite both of these people poetry, and they invited me to their house. I had a job in Cyrulik Warszawski, where I used to, recite poetry, sing sometimes, and my mother would be always in the audience. I was a little kid, actually. So this is one of my pictures that was taken when I was on the stage. Now, this is in front of our house in Stavki. There was a big house. My grandpa Henrik, with his mother, lived on the other side. My father had 3 sisters, 2 brothers. They were all lived in the country. They were all country squires. The Polish government permitted some Jews to own land, and in Galicia, there were quite a few people who owned land, the Jews. My grandfather, Henrik, once owned, I think, an estate with a nobleman, but I think he sold it and they went here. This is called Podola, which is the southern part of Poland, has very good earth. And this is me staring into the life, and my sister sitting there behind me. So we were very close as kids. And there was really there was nothing. We lived completely in the fields of my dad. There was just the smiths and the carpenter. They had their own little building. They would come to work. We had a lot of Ukrainians who worked for my dad, and he was good to them. So we had not too much trouble as Jews because he was really very good to them and they were grateful. And our life was wonderful. We had a cook called Hanya. Each of us had a dog. We had chickens and geese and everything in the estate. So we had our own food. It was a wonderful life. We didn't have to worry about anything. But unfortunately, as you know, the war came. So everything changed. So my sister was going to gymnasium in Przemyśl. Now, this is the River Dniest. My mom used to take us, as I told you, so the picture with her before. And little, it's me, and my sister is bigger. And we used to play around in that river, walk around in the town. My mom would buy things. We never ate there, actually. We only ate at home because we had a cook. I also had a nanny. It was called, what was it called? Hanya. And no, Hanya was our cook. We were, what was her name? Kasia, I think was her name. After I grew up a little, she went to work in France, but she was very good to me. Always used to send me little things. So life was beautiful, In the summer, in the winter was very cold in Poland. We used to go with sleds everywhere. We couldn't, go out too much because it was a lot of. So when I was supposed to be born, they put a big stork. They made it out of paper, put it in a window, and told my sister that a baby was coming. And there it was. I was born Ariana. That was my name. My sister was Aurelia Renata, and she was very gifted girl because she always wrote poetry. She always wrote poetry before she started to write the book, which I never saw. I never saw her diary. I guess when I used to say, "What are you doing there?" And she would say, "Well, I'm doing my homework." Well, I never asked her anything. So I never really knew that she wrote the diary. Neither did my mom at first, no. But she signs, as you see in the book, Ty mi pomożesz, Bulushi Boże. You will help me, Mom and God. That's what she wrote all the time. So our life was pretty good, We visited my grandparents in Przemyśl. Sometimes a train would go, and we go about 2-3 hours to get there. That was the way we lived when I was young. This is my mom and dad. They married in 1923. As I told you, he had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. and he was the one that managed the estate. We really don't know what happened to my dad because apparently my daughter, who was very, very interested in the story because she didn't know really what the family was like, so she dug out this thing from the vault where my mother kept it and never read it. I wanted to know what it was about. And now she found out these professors who went to Poland to do research. And actually, only last year, we found out from them about our life and what happened to our family. And some of them, how they jumped from the trains, how of them died, went to this camp or that camp. They couldn't really find out what happened to my dad. So I never know if he died in Bergen-Belsen or whatever, because he wasn't with us. We were with my grandparents, and we went to Russian school, and my mom was with the Germans, so we didn't see her for 2 years. And that's her picture when she married in 1923. Now, during the war, I saw a story how I survived. I went to school under the Russians for 2 years. And in elementary school, I had a very good girlfriend, and her name was Jitka Leszczynska. Jitka had two sisters who went to with my sister's school called Konopnicka. That was a writer, that's the name of the school, and that was a gymnasium. And she went there with her two sisters, and I went with Jitka to elementary school. She was my best friend, and she was Catholic. So I knew her mother, father, and the sisters, and we we lived in Przemysl. But the war came in 1941 again. After 39, the Soviets came. So the Jews were able to go to school. Now there was a pact in 1941. The Germans were fighting the Russians, and so we were stuck, and the Germans started to approach the city we used to live. We started to run away. My grandmother and the maid stayed home. And then we decided to come back, and we lived in Przemysl. Now, this picture is my mom and I in Hotel Europejski. Hotel Europejski was occupied by the German officers. How do I get there now? So during the war, when the Germans were in Przemysl, we had to leave. They had a ghetto. What was the name of the town, the part of the ghetto? You know, there was a certain, well, anyway, there was a ghetto. So we used to live in our building on the main street, Słowackiego 19. And during the German occupation, we could not live there anymore because they made a ghetto. So all the Jews had to move. They only could take with them 25 kilograms of whatever they could take. But a policeman came to the door of my grandpa, and he said, listen, Finkel was his name, you have to move. So grandpa said, I don't know what he said, but something was in his hands. And guess what? We stayed for another year in the building. So that was pretty good. But eventually we had to move to the ghetto. My sister wrote in the book, which you didn't probably read it, but Zygmunt was her boyfriend. He was a great guy. He was good looking, green eyes, curly black hair, and all the girls used to swoon at my sister's boyfriend. I liked him too. He was very nice. So he used to come to the house. So she writes about him. Of course, it's a love story. She's going to marry him. He was going to be a doctor like his dad. But, you know, life changes. So he decided, now there is the ghetto, and everybody they have this thing called the action. And every time they call the auction, they take the Jews and put them in some kind of a camp. I don't know which camp. Anyway, I was a young girl. My sister was 6 years older. So he decided he better take us out from the ghetto. Now, we were not long time in the ghetto. We were lucky, I told you, because of my grandpa bribed the policeman. But we had to leave too because Zygmunt thought it was too dangerous. So she takes his mom, he takes his father, he takes my sister, and they go. Somehow he must have paid off the guy at the border of the ghetto, and they take him out to his mother's brother, who works now in the Judenrat and is able to live on the Aryan side. And he was going to go and take him to be um, at the garret or whatever, just to hide them. So there were three of them. But he took me, I told you I had a girlfriend, Jitka. He took me to Jitka's family. Jitka's father and mother decided they could bring me. So they bring me to the father and to the father and mother of the girl, and I stayed there a week. In the meantime, my sister, after 3 days, and his mother and father get shot. Now, I don't know about it. I'm with them, and he's told me he's going to take me to my mom, who is in Warsaw and works, guess what, in this Hotel Europejski. So my mother was educated lady. She went to the University of Vienna, and my uncle, her brother, was sent to Caen in northern part of France, and he became an engineer and an architect. And my mother doesn't know anything about him, but she works in this hotel. She does everything in German. She's assistant to the director, and the officers live there. She has a beautiful room. I so I well, guess what happens? Mr. Leszczynski, my girlfriend's father, has to take me to my mom. Now, how it is, remember, I'm not now, I don't have any papers. I'm his daughter now. So he takes me by my hand, and the town people kind of know me. And because, I was on the stage, this is harder than asking questions. And they take me to the railroad station. He does. I think his one daughter goes to and sits in another room in the train, and we have to change now in Krakow. And there is a revision. They're looking at everybody, who they are, and the papers. So it's all Gestapo and the dogs. He holds me by my hand and said, "This is my daughter." I feel pretty bad. I have just a little tiny lunch suitcase, little lunchbox. Now my grandpa filled this lunchbox with American gold dollar. It's all pasted in. So he said to me, "Yarusha, if you have to go, now you have to have a little money. You can always sell it because it's gold in case you need it." That's all I have, a little coat, a little dress, and he holds my hand. So we're going to go to my mom now. We're going to Warsaw. The Gestapo tells him everything is fine. Then we arrive at the railroad station. He holds my hand, and some guy comes. Excuse me, I have to drink water. Some guy comes and he says, "You are holding a Jewish child." So Mr. Leszczynski looked very aristocratic. He had a big mustache, gray hair, wonderful looking man. He says, "Listen, if you are going to say anything like that, I'm going to kill you." So the guy runs away. There's my savior again. Here I am with Mr. Leszczynski, and he takes me to Bereda family. There I'm supposed to meet my mother. Now, I don't know how it all happened because Zygmunt, my mother used to write to us. So I guess they had the address where she was, no? And so this is now Hotel Europejski. My mother is there, but I meet her at Bereda's family, where she comes, where the woman becomes my godmother in church. I get baptized, but my mother does also something for the church, for the bishop. What should I?
No, she's just going through the photos.
I'm going through the photos. I'm telling you how I got here, because how do you think I'm here? So I get pulled into the convents, and finally my mother is able to take me here, and here I am with her, and I go to Complete, which is like you go to the houses of people, because there was no school for children in Warsaw. They had to go to somebody's house. It wasn't permitted under the Germans that people go to school. So I'm staying with my mom here. And she took me out of the convents. I got baptized. We go to church, and we live here for a while.
Elizabeth, your life, everything Elizabeth is telling us now, it's beautifully summarized in the back of the book, because I read it again this morning, and it really is fascinating. You talk about saviors. You had several saviors in your life.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and kind of keep this moving along so we can go over some good questions here and tell people a little more about the diary itself.
All right.
But what other photos do you have? Are we done? Okay, here's what I'd like to talk about. I want to paint a broad picture of what the timeline. So Renia started this diary in 1939. Her last entry was 1942, right? On July 25th. And I noticed that because that happened to be my mother's 22nd birthday. When I read that, I thought my mom was 22 when Renia made her last entry. And then on July 30th is when she, as you heard from Elizabeth, is when she and Zygmunt, her boyfriend's parents, were shot. And they didn't even know this diary existed. And Zygmunt, the boyfriend, played a huge, huge role. Elizabeth, you call him one of your saviors. You were not aware that Renia was keeping a diary. Zygmunt became aware that Renia was keeping this diary and took it. Renia was aware that he saw it, and it's wonderful to read her entry when she realized, oh, diary, you've betrayed me or something, and someone else has seen it, but he's my love, and it's okay, basically. And it was fortunate that he did take over the diary because he was able to write entries that told us what happened after, actually right before and then after Renia and his parents were shot. I'd love to hear for you to share the story, both of you, of how you found out about this diary, not only till the 50s, but I'll set it up. So Zygmunt moves to the US. He's in New York. He's a pediatrician, and he had always kept Renia's diary in his home. He had married, but in his basement, right, he had a shrine to Renia. He had pictures and letters, and because she was an amazing writer, and if we have time, I want to read one of her poems, which this book is chock full of her poetry, and I encourage you to check it out and read it. But tell us what happened when all of a sudden in the 1950s, Zygmunt shows up at your home. Elizabeth.
So I don't know how he found out, because my mother was Leszczyńska now, but he knew it because when he sent me to Warsaw, she knew the name. So he comes up. We were living on the west side in New York, and he comes up finds my mom, I don't know how, and hands her the diary. And nobody asked him, where was the diary during the war? I mean, he was in 5 camps, last which was Auschwitz, or Święcim in Polish. And he finds the diary, brings it to my mom. I'm there, and there it is, the diary. My mother says, yeah, she wrote this diary. Yes, she wrote the diary. He knew about it. I read it in the book that he was, she let him read the diary, some of it. And he thought it was fascinating. She had 60 poems in the diary. If something happened, she started to write about it, bad, good, whatever, love, desire. She writes a poem. So he brings this diary to my mom, hands it in. Nobody asked him, where did he get it? Where was it hiding? Must have been somebody either brought it to him to the United States. I don't know, but we never found out about it. But my mother can't read it. It's in Polish, 700 pages. It's like a notebook, big notebook, and she just can't, and puts it in the wall. Hanover Bank it was in 1946. Immediately she went there, and a little jewelry she stuck it all. As a matter of fact, the man from the bank used to be our witness when we got citizen paper because we were there the first time, right? First week. And so my daughter, was in the wall. My mom died. She never read it. I took it out sometimes. I had a Polish friend who wrote the book about the Polish uprising. We used to go to Florida. He and his wife, I stood up when he got married, and he tried to help me. I started to cry. I couldn't get beyond 10 pages. So that was that. So we put it back in the vault, and my daughter, when she was kind of young, not she was in her teens, says, "What is in that diary? What is that paper? What is mine?" Yeah. So she takes it out, gets a man from Poland, a young student, pays him a few $1,000, and he translate the cursory something. Oh, says Alexandra. Ah, that's something very interesting. I want to read about that. I want to get it translated. And ever since then, it's 20 years, she's working on it, working. She found a man, he translated in Poland. Then we got two women in England. They translated it better. So it appears in the Smithsonian, and they read about it. St. Martin's Press gets interested in it. They come to the house, and the Smithsonian pays those English girls, I mean, the English girls, but Polish, who translate the book. And we finally get the book in English. And there it is, a hard work for years. And we speak, I was 5 times, I think we were in BBC in Europe and this and Poland 3 times. I speak perfect Polish. I have not forgotten that beautiful language. And my sister wrote such beautiful language in Polish. It was my grandma who was so great. My grandma Anna, the pictures in the book. She sent my sister outside of school to a Polonistic professor. Yes, and he would teach my sister again how to write. And she would write, she was a president of the literary club, and she was writing and poem, whatever the school needed. I mean, she was just great. She was in a Russian newspaper. I can't find the paper. Somebody took it, didn't give me back. So, she was a great person.
Yep, she was a gifted poet.
Gifted person. And so my daughter, God bless her, she thought it had very great value about the Soviet occupation, about the German occupation, about life. We weren't in the camp. My sister, unfortunately, wasn't anywhere. They shot her right away after they took her out of the ghetto. I don't think we were there 2 weeks when Zygmunt took her out and his parents. But my daughter was persistent, and now there was a movie they showed, The Broken Dreams. They showed it at the UN. I don't have the movie because the man didn't give it to me. But anyway, that's the way it is.
Yep. Alexandra, I want to ask you a question in a minute because your role in bringing this book to fruition is huge. But first, right, if Renia had lived, she would have been probably a very famous poet now. I'm going to read one of her brief poems out of the book. She writes, Know that when the dusk begins and the tower bell tolls for evening prayers, and the December day has spent all its power, curled and shriveled in a ponderous hour, I will come to you. I'll come in yearning that flows, or in a sparkling star that glows, or in a silent holiday breath, or in a sigh instead, I'll come. And that was a poem written to her mother, who she missed so much. So here is this diary. It's brought to your home in the 1950s, sits for several decades, and then Alexandra, you start asking questions and you start getting curious. And did your mom, before you discover the diary, or when you did your mom Elizabeth ever mention your family roots? And then what about your curiosity prompted you to carry this forward and your persistence in getting this published? Talk to us about that.
Well, first, I have to thank the Holocaust Museum Houston for inviting us to share our story, and Wendy Warren for hosting, and you, Dee Dee, for moderating. I also want to send a shout out to Kate Arndt, the youth and diary historian at the museum, who talks extensively about diaries that have emerged from the Holocaust, including my Aunt Renia's. And these are diaries where the author did not survive, but they survived through their writings. So I want to thank her, Kate, for bringing this to light and having such dedication to this topic and keeping their stories and diaries alive and relevant and not lost to history. And I'm honored to be here with you as you remember the victims of the Holocaust. You know, we're living in difficult times. Fascism is on the rise wherever you look. And it seems that we have forgotten the lessons of the Holocaust and World War II. You know, even here in the United States, we seem to have lost sight of our values and the difference between right and wrong. And even I have no solution to the political problems here at home or overseas. All I or we can continue to do is speak the truth about what happened, and as loudly and clearly as possible to whomever will listen to us. So we still can't lose hope that we can restore virtue and honor to the peoples of the world in our world order, an order that is centered on peace and dignity and human rights to people the world over. So I just wanted to thank you all for inviting us. You know, I'm thankful to have my mother here, and we all should be.
I'm only
She's only
94.
94. There aren't many survivors left who are first account witnesses to the horrors of war, but she's here and she's vibrant and she tells her story. As difficult it is, as hard as it is to listen to and tell her story, she realizes that yes, it does have new value, and her sister can get the recognition that she received. So no, I did not know much about my history. It's sort of like an Madeleine Albright story. I knew that she had a sister who perished in the war, but I did not know, probably until my early teens, that she was Jewish. And that sort of precipitated my interest in her story. And my father, too, who was born in Vienna, Austria, was also a survivor of sorts. I mean, he was lucky to escape in 1939. So my name is Alexandra Renata. I was named after this beautiful, talented person that I was never able to meet.
There she is in the back there.
Yeah, there she is.
There she is.
So yes, I took an invested interest in trying to learn about my past, my heritage, why we had no family members, and I thought I could find answers within the diary. So it's been sort of a lifelong journey to have this diary published.
And you know, your timing is so beautiful and poignant to Alexandra, because when you started really pushing this out, you can Google and find stories on NPR and other places. Really, they've gotten some wonderful publicity. Things weren't the way they are now. Things are heating up. On International Holocaust Day this year on CBS Mornings, Vladimir Duthier was doing a story on a survivor named Oscar Jacob, who is just about your age, Elizabeth, and he had this quote, and this is just, last month? He says, the level of anti-Semitism, what we are experiencing now, is almost on the level of the European
Right.
anti-Semitism
Yes.
I experienced as a 13-year-old in Hungary and Romania. And to that, the response by Vladimir Duthier said, now more than ever, not only remembering the past, but confronting the past is incredibly important and necessary now more than ever. So for a question for both of you before we open it up to anyone who may have questions, either online or here, is what is your takeaway? What message would you like everyone here to know about the takeaway from your book and maybe connecting it to what's happening today? Elizabeth, Alexandra?
I don't know. You know, I did the Holocaust myself. I spoke in the German bank with Dr. Burla, who is a Greek, CEO of Pfizer. And he was first, and I was second. There were about 300 people there. We went to the Deutsche Bank, and the Germans trying to, remember what happened during the war. However, a lot of people forget about it, and there's a lot of people here who never know about it or deny it. And we have to, or people who still alive, can tell them how horrible it would be to wear an armband. The minute you say something wrong, they shoot you all the time because you're a Jew. It's terrible. People don't realize about the war. They forget about it, or they don't want to know about it.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth, Alexandra, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'd just like to say I hope that Renia's struggles and battles and hopes are a compass for the difficult times that we're living in now. And as I said before, we just need to hold on to hope that virtue and honor will be restored in the world order.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now we have some minutes left for any questions. I think, are people typing questions on the chat?
We're going to ask them to type their
Okay, if people who are online, and thank you again for joining us, if you can type your questions on the chat, and I'll see if I can read them. And meanwhile, do we have questions? So Sandy, come.
I knew this was familiar. I had read this book. I'd read the diary a long time ago. Anyway, I don't remember exactly when, but what I do remember, and I always wanted to have a copy of it, is one of her poems that she wrote toward the end about when worry goes to sleep, don't wake it up. You know that poem? There's so much bitterness in life. It's the source of the worst evil. When your worry goes to sleep, don't wake it up. And that, I mean, I won't read the rest of it, but I just mean that what I found inspiring about that poem is this is towards the end, when she's living in hiding with fear, but she's still a young girl with love, the kind of teenage love that you have when you're just full of that angst of everything, and misses her mother and doesn't know what's going on. And yet she says, when worry goes to sleep, don't wake it up. And that just is so touching to me. And I wanted you to know that I remembered that from when I read it.
Thank you, Sandy. And for Elizabeth and Alexandra, it bears noting that Sandy Lessig, who just asked the question, is a second generation, part of the second generation survivor. Your parents, your mother, father?
Yeah.
Which one? Both?
My father.
Her father. Okay. All right. Does anyone else? Yes, hi. This is Hyman Penn, also a second gen.
Hi. Did Sigmund ever come back to visit, or did you ever have conversations with him by phone later on after he delivered the diary?
Well, I didn't have much conversation, I was young. But then when my mother died, his wife wasn't so crazy to see me. Uh, but because he did have a shrine of my sister and a picture on the wall. So, it's life. However, I must say, Genya did invite me and my husband. My husband was 6 feet tall. I'm not even 5. But anyway, he is Viennese. I was teaching high school. I met him. He was an English teacher. Then he got a doctorate at Columbia. I just have a master's. But, you know, uh, yeah, what is he asking? I was
If
saying,
you still had a
so then
relationship.
Genya cooked the dinner, invited us to her house, and we're sort of friendly with her daughter.
That
She has a daughter and a son. I
she
never
might
met,
not.
I don't know, but I don't know her son too well. But I know the daughter who lives in New York. The son is a professor in California. So, he saw me. We had pictures. I gave him to Pamela, that's his daughter. She's a physical therapist. She's very nice. She couldn't have too much contact with me. She would not like it too much. But I did go to the wedding of Pamela.
What's unfortunate is she never asked him, where did this
Yeah,
diary live
I
during the
never-
war?
You
How
know,
did you get it?
How you alive and don't ask questions? I didn't ask my mother where she met my father.
It's so important to ask parents, grandparents, what was going on in their lives. They were young once too. And you should ask them questions, because when they're no longer, you can't ask those questions anymore.
That's
Yeah.
right. I showed that Zygmunt died in 1992. So he lived
died,
quite a few
he was
years.
very sick. So his best friend in the book, his name is Maciek, which is Marcel in America. He was a doctor. They both went in Heidelberg Medical School. The Germans allowed the Jews who came out of the camps. They gave them the money and the know-how, and they went to Heidelberg and finished medical school. Both of them came to America, and when Zygmunt died, I think he was only 69. He had a tumor in the brain. I went to the funeral, and Marcel, who was with him in all the camps and their school, he couldn't deliver it. He was so, heartbroken that somebody else delivered it for him. And he died very young in New York. The mother lived, she had Alzheimer's, her daughter told me.
And I think Marcel was your doctor, your internist. Did I read that right?
Yeah, he was my doctor. He was at NYU for, you know how I met him? So I was working at Columbia First Medical School, and I wanted to learn something electron microscopy. Don't know why, because I was teaching school for 27 years. But for a little bit, I did that. And somebody was screaming in the cafeteria, Arianka, Arianka. That was Maciek. He was the doctor there.
He was
couldn't
calling out
believe
your Polish name, Arianka, Arianka.
Yeah, that
Right.
was my name, Ariana Polish Temple. But then
Yeah.
I was baptized. I was made Elizabeth Yaroslava, Alicia. I was baptized when I was 10 by this bishop. My mother did everything for free in German. He was a great guy. He helped us a lot.
Oh, gosh. You had so many saviors in your life. Someone in the chat wrote, not really a question, but I know that Renia's words will always be relevant. And I'm so grateful to be able to educate students on Renia. Oh, good, it's an educator. That's so nice to know, because these lessons are definitely timeless. Are there any other questions from here in the room or online? Anyone in the room? Okay, I'm going to hand the mic. Oh, Wendy has a question.
Elizabeth, what advice do you have for young people today, young children, with all of the issues in the world that Alexandra talked about, what advice would you give to young people?
Well, first, I'd like young people to be interested that there was a war and there was persecution, and that's what we see today. I mean, they should be connected somehow. And I would like to say that love is very important in life, not hate. They should tolerate people, tolerate the world. Why always hate everybody? Hate is killing everybody. Maybe you can fit in a little love here and there. Because if you're kind, if you're nice, maybe it gets through to somebody. Look how kind were people to me. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't all these kind people. So,
That's
the
beautiful.
young people are unaware of things like we are, that we went through. They have to be educated to tell them. They listen to us somehow and see what the hatred is doing in the world. It's killing everybody here. I mean, what's doing in the globe today? Nothing but hatred. What
You
about
know,
love? Huh?
that's
Here.
that's a
Here.
beautiful message, Elizabeth. It's a beautiful, what you're saying is beautiful. And one thing, if you read the diary, everyone, you will see that your sister, also Renia, also had such optimism and hope and
Yes.
faith and love.
did.
I mean, everything she was going through, and she missed your mother so much because your mother was
Oh,
with you at that time, that almost at the end of almost every diary entry, she prays to God and to her mother. And it was
yes.
always Hero Israel. I mean, she was so faithful and so loveful, and she
She
lives
had
on through
such
this
hope.
diary.
She was hoping she'd be a famous writer. She was really a wonderful writer.
She really
Her
was.
Polish, they said, was so beautiful. I mean, she was a very gifted child. She started writing really when she was 14. She was writing poetry. The book, I think the diary is starting 39. But before that, I have some papers here. She started to write already then, when
Yeah,
she was
beautiful writer.
14. Yeah.
Beautiful writer. And then Alexandra, I'll ask you the same question that Wendy asked your mother. What would you tell your next generation? And what would you tell your generation and beyond, generations below us, lessons of Renia's diary that they can carry forward?
I find that people often ask, how do you combat things like fascism? And I think when you have fascism, you have illiberalism, you have nationalism, you have populism. And I think it's about focusing on social media. There's a lot of misconceptions and conspiracy theories. So I think it's just important to educate yourself and continue listening to the truth about, what actually happened. Um, and as my mother said, tolerance and love is the way and the key to a more peaceful world.
When we came to America, my mother was so poor. We had nothing. Anyway, but my mother would always send people something for the winter. I found a letter from that, when she was in Hotel Europejski, the wife of the director, Yulcha. She wrote a letter to my mother. Thank you so much for the gloves and for the scarf and everything for me and Wojtuś. I used to play with the son because they had nothing in Poland, after the war. Who had anything? So my mother would still share things with people, even though she had nothing. Be kind, be kind, give, give. You can't take it with you anyway.
Lovely. So be kind and give even when you've gone
Well,
through
yeah, people are
the
so
worst.
selfish sometimes.
Right.
The greed is so terrible, right? And
So,
fraud and all that stuff. I mean, yeah,
so what
share
you
a
have
little
done,
bit
what you have
kindly.
done today is brought us some light and some positivity and some beautiful memories. And the fact that you're still here, 94 years young, we
Uh,
hope
for how
that you will
long
be
have we
around a long
get
time.
up? I
And
think
Alexandra, what you have done to bring this, you worked so hard to get this.
Something else, that girl.
Something else, that's right. And so in the midst of everything going on today, I encourage everyone to check out the book from Holocaust Museum Houston Library or buy it online and read it, read the poetry, read the story, read especially the notes at the end by Elizabeth. It's a story of love. It's a story of survival. It's a story of hope. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you both. And thank you for those who joined us online.
And we are glad to share the life with you.
Great. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. I hope to see you in May when I'm there.
Yes,
Bye.
yes.
Okay?
Bye, Kate.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth and Alexandra. We really appreciate it. And thank you for being here today. And to our wonderful moderator, Dee Dee Dochen.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope there was an end.